Good evening and welcome to the first Dog Talk for 2024. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our fortnightly Q&A. Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Stefan Cross from Echo Park Working Dogs. How you going, Steph?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
That's awesome, mate. What did today see you do, mate?
Today, mainly it was 41 degrees here. We're still tidying up the end of harvest, shifted to the last block and reaping some wheat. Took it a bit steady in the middle of the day because of the fire danger, and then, keep on going. So,
cool. And you mentioned down there, where's home, mate?
Strathalbyn, where, South Australia's probably 50 minutes south of Adelaide, and a lot of people know Victor Harbour down on the coast. Yep. We're about 30 minutes east of that, so not 6 kilometres off of Lake Alexandrina, which is the end of the Mighty Murray system. So,
beautiful spot of the world.
Yeah,
that's right.
It is a postcard. The whole town, I reckon. It almost it's beautiful.
We don't know any different. Grew up here. So.
That's good. And just on that, not knowing any different, mate, so you've been there for quite some time?
Yeah, I was born 3 k's across the paddock. I bought the farm off my uncle, which was my grandfather's farm, which was his father's farm before that. So it was 1902. All mallee scrub and all being cleared and now farmed. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That'd make you 4th generation then, is that correct, on that property?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. Yep.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, right. 1902. Well, that's 122 years in itself.
Yep.
That's awesome, mate. How, like you mentioned about it getting cleared and that, like, so how long has it been farmed for?
Well, that probably took them 20, 30 years to get the majority of it cleared, and then like they still were tidying up, picking stumps, picking rocks. It was all manual labour. Grandpa had 4 sons, so that helped that out a bit. So that's a lot of labour, and then in my time, there's still a stump jump plough parked in the scrub or something like that as a reminder, but it's all been tractors and machinery in my time. So,
yeah. And in your time, like obviously having so acquainted for so long, how has the stock handling practices evolved? Like, have you?
Well, the first question is probably, what do you guys do on your property?
Oh yeah, well, sorry, yeah, we should ask that first.
Yeah, we crop and sheep. There's a lot of people in the district that just continuous crop, but previous uncles and dad and grandpa, they were religious fine wool sheep men. So the sheep came first and the sheep stayed. I had a bit of a headed towards the cropping a bit. I liked the cropping, but I didn't want to do away with my sheep. So I run a medic subclover based pasture system, which puts nitrogen in the ground for the next crop. So instead of growing a grain legume crop as a break crop, I just grow medics, clovers and stuff and run the sheep on them. So provides very good feed.
So you stayed on the property like your entire life? Like, did you ever go away and come back, or?
No, I left school at 15 and worked in every job I could find around the place. My grandpa had quite a sizable farm for the time, but with so many boys, and they'd just come out of the 1950s wool boom, and I think he thought that if each lad had 500 acres each, that was going to be fine. And then the 60s and 70s and 80s hit, and it wasn't very viable at all. So come home on the farm, did a lot odd job work, and ended up shearing for 15 years, share farming. Bought when I got married. Simone and I bought in here the uncle's farm. He retired, and I think we bought 5 places since. So we started with 400 acres, and now got 2,000 that we own.
Oh, beautiful! Good on you. That's awesome. And are they all adjoined, or is it a bit of travelling amongst?
Yeah, no, they all unbelievably. We bought a block last year, and we bought a block 2 years before that, and the one 2 years before that actually joined up.
Oh, beautiful.
The missing link. So yeah, we can drive from one end to the other without having to go on the road if we wanted to.
Yeah. A bit easier to get to work, right?
Yeah, well, it's very good with sheep. Like you just sort of, as shearing comes up, you just move mobs closer and closer and closer, and like drive them for 2 or 3 k's into another paddock or whatever, and then leave them. And 2 days later, by the time shearing comes, they're all around nearby, and then the opposite happens after shearing.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So we shear in April, so the whole farm is open, but for a lot of the year, there's a fair bit under crop. You got to be careful you don't crop yourself out of access. Like you could, we did it last year actually, and we had a heap of sheep right up the top end of the farm, and we did crutching up there, and got Lee Micken come and did my crutching actually, and we did all that up there, and we got by, but it was a bit of a nuisance not being able to sort of bring them down to some other paddocks. So.
Yeah.
And how much of that is originally, like the properties you've bought, how much of that, or is any of it the original property that your grandfather had?
Yeah, I bought the original place off one uncle, and then I bought the place next door with another uncle. Dad was married late in life. He was 37 when he got married. So time I left school, and my brother as well, they were sort of looking to wind down, retire, and which also the 2 uncles next door had no kids. So one was a bachelor, one married very late. So it sort of opened up the access to a bit of share farming or a bit of whatever for them, and then eventually a bit of leasing, and then eventually buying it. So, which is very satisfying to be able to keep it in the family, but very expensive at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there another parcel to add to it, mate, which makes it collect, or is that all of it done?
No, I think that's about all that'll happen. So yeah. But we also lease about 800 acres we lease, and share farm a bit extra as well off of other people. So
yeah. So obviously you had the fine wool sheep around you and everything. Is that where the dogs started, or was that later in life?
No, dogs. My dad always was a dog trainer and lover, but never spent a cent to get one, if you know what I mean. So, like, if someone had a dog, he'd get one out the pound, or someone would have a stray or whatever, and he'd get that dog, and he turned into a fairly handy sheepdog. But nothing once the trial dogs were around and seen, his dogs weren't up to that level, of course. But the trial dogs around were bred for a purpose. They're bred to be the best, and I think they are easier to train to a level than getting a dog out the pound. So I always grew up with dogs, and loved dogs, and that was they were all, the 3 brothers, my father and his 2 brothers, or my 2 uncles, their farms all still adjoined, so it was a real family environment that dipping, for instance, back in the day when it was compulsory dipping was a joint effort. Each brother brought their sheep to a central dip, and we all just worked together and dipped, and shearing sometimes, and go and help each other out, and like so. Seed grading, all those jobs that required labour, like sort of, they were all done jointly between the brothers.
Any competitions when you're doing that joint stuff with, oh, look at this dog here and look at my dog? And...
Yeah, nothing like that at that stage. Like my uncle who owned the farm we bought, he spent 3 days down at the Malang dog trial in the 80s, I think, letting sheep go, and one of the trialers gave him a pup, which probably sort of a bit where it started. So from that pup, he bred a pup, gave to my brother, Milton, and he took that to a couple of encouraged trials or something, and my uncle had a bit of a go, nearly penned on one occasion. Another influence, I suppose, into the trialling game was about 8 Ks as the crows fly, was Malcolm Sorrell, who his claim to fame, I suppose, he bred Sorigo Joe, which was Lou Noble's great dog. And when I was a kid, we stopped and watched him trial at the Adelaide show, and he was the local guy that was going off to trials, and never really expected to do that myself. But life is funny, isn't it?
Absolutely. And having like such a tight-knit family there, like, and all working around, like, was there any change in the way you guys handled stock back then and your dogs to the way you handle them now?
Yeah, well, they were commands and that sort of thing were, like it was the old, no, don't get back that way. I want you to get back the other way, like it was not, no side commands really as such, but yeah, just they were all well trained and for what they asked of them. But my uncle lived here when I was only 10 or 12. Like the passion for fine wool sheep was such that everyone who turned up had to go and have a look at the latest ram. So he'd walk out the back door and say to his dogs, should we have a look at the rams? And they'd just go, bang, out they'd go. Round up, out to the front paddock, round up the rams, bring them into the corner, and they'd all have a bit of a look at the wool and carry on a bit and look out, that one's better than that one. And probably a bit like we do with dogs, young pups.
Yeah, very similar, I suppose.
I guess it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you remember your first dog, like the first one you actually owned?
Yeah, the first dog I had was a Border Collie Kelpie Cross. I got her when I was 14. I remember she had no cast at all. I taught her to back. I taught her a lot of things. We were building a shed at the time. I taught her to climb up the ladder to a 14-foot high shed, and she'd come up the ladder to you. And if you wrapped the hammer or something in her collar, she'd bring that up. So, yeah, she had no real cast. I remember spending ages running with her, trying to drag her out around, trying to get her to cast. And I succeeded in the end, but yeah. So she was. Sorry.
You go.
No, she was just a good all-round farm dog, a pushy yard dog sort of thing. Not a lot of finesse, but sort of my best mate up until I was 24 or 5, I think. So
yeah. And when you were shearing, were you working dogs in that time, or were you just purely shearing?
No, I used to. Well, all the shearing I ever did was within like 25 minutes of home. We used to, being seasonal here, we'd put the crop in, finish about July. First shed was the first week of July. We'd shear from July to October. Just when they'd start good crossbred shearing, we'd have to knock off and do hay and harvest and all that sort of thing. So I saw a lot of weathers. a lot of triple bar neck merinos. But yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of other farms and like what to do and what not to do. And, you sort of go to, and we'd go back again to shear the lambs, and we'd go back again to do the crutching in March and April. So you were sort of either never far away from these places, and they were sort of really good. They sort of took in like one of the family a bit, and, told you what was working for them and what wasn't working for them. And sometimes
especially so close to home too. It'd be great to have other mentors, sort of friends and farmers around that could help you as you were growing up and then taking on your own property.
Oh yeah, no, it was the contacts through shearing and what I was sort of pretty observant, I suppose, but I saw plenty what to do and I saw plenty what not to do.
Sorry, I was just going to tap in on that. Like you mentioned, like you learned like experience of like what to do and what not to do, and like was that based on like some of your own experiences, or also like the mentors of out there as well, or people showing you different ways of doing things?
Oh yeah, well, everyone thinks they're doing everything right, else they wouldn't be doing it. And no one does anything wrong on purpose. But you'd just go from place to place, and you'd see. I mean, one thing I swapped on my farm pretty swiftly was July lambing, like the traditional lambing in May here, which number one, when I was working on my own, I had the crop, like May is seeding time, it's by the calendar. So you start Anzac Day and you start seeding, and blokes were having lambs. I was having lambs then, and sometimes it hasn't even rained, the season hasn't broken. So you're trying to lamb ewes on a paddock of nothing, spend half the day carting them hay when you should be seeding because the time is critical. And I swapped to July lambing, and because I saw that while I was shearing somewhere and thought, gee, how good's this? What was I doing it the other way for? So
yeah.
And how long have you been doing that for now?
That's just one example of one thing that you pick up. So
absolutely. How long ago was that?
I probably was 28. So yeah, 25 years ago probably.
Yeah.
So just like in that last 25 years, how more efficient did your time get somewhere else based on just a little decision like that of witnessing something? That's pretty cool.
Oh, you could never add up the money it's made just by one, getting your crop in on time. Two, your sheep are way more fertile by being mated later apparently the merino sheep, when the days get shorter, she gets more fertile. So like as soon as we started July lambing, the twins started coming thick and fast, and but you've got to feed on one end or the other in this country. Like you're either going to feed the ewe or you're going to feed the lamb. So we were feeding the lamb on our grain stubbles, and then that developed into building a feedlot, which we put them in there when feed run out, and now we've got the system worked that we actually creep feed lambs while their mother's there. So there's grain in the paddock, but the mother can't get to it, which stimulates the rumen, and then when we wean, we just wean straight into the feedlot on the grain. So we're turning lambs out probably 2 months earlier than what we were doing. So our last load of lambs left. A week ago, we sold lambs, July drop lambs. They were 28.5 kilo.
That's really cool.
I've never heard of that.
Or for one little decision changed everything, right? And probably without making that decision, maybe the feedlot didn't happen.
Sorry, what was that?
If maybe without making that decision, the feedlot didn't happen when it did either.
No, that's right. That's right. And then once it was built, then all of a sudden we had a dry year and we used it for a drought lot and put all the ewes in there and took the hay to them instead of them running all around, causing erosion, dust in the wool. They just walk in the paddocks looking for feed. So, like each little step helps you along the way, and you find another benefit. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what about your current team of dogs? Like, what have you got there at the moment?
I got the 4 open dogs, which Lady and Baz are out of Sandy, who was a dog I got back, a fella called John McSkimming. Had her for a couple of years. She was a double cross of Connie, which was my best Australian rep dog I had. And Sandy was a bit of a naughty dog, and she busted out of her kennel one night and left her front leg behind. But she'd won an open trial before she did that. She also just missed out. I beat myself by a point in a Tux little short course trial year after, when she was on 3 legs, because there was no cast. So yeah, she's the mother of Lady and Bazza, and they're by Wandara Snap, which is Mick's dog. Mick got Echo Park Mel, and Connor McConnell's got Echo Park Glen, which those 4 dogs all came out of the one litter.
And they're all open dogs, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
I can't vouch for the others, but I've seen Mel at Mick's place many a times, and she's a cracking little dog there.
Yeah. No, she's a good dog. And the other 2 dogs, one is out of the same bitch, Sandy, by a dog I got off of Carolyn Bellevue Rex, who was. And then Laura is I bought off a farm bottom of York Peninsula. A guy called Morris Bennett had her, and Morris actually got Connie's sister when they 2 came from Doug Connor. So Laura's a descendant, but about 5 or 6 generations back. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they're the 4 open dogs at the moment. I've got 2 more to start, hopefully at Port Fairy in the novice, hopefully. One of them is by Bazza, out of a dog called Spot, which I bred. It's a double cross of Malcolm Taylor's line. And Ollie's out of that double cross Taylor bitch, and he's by the Bellevue Rex that I got from Carolyn Bell. So that Bellevue Rex was a bit of a handful, but I'm probably more interested in breeding dogs than training them. I'm a bit of a lazy trainer, but
I can relate.
I think that we've trained dogs too much and we've fixed too many faults, and so I'm trying to breed better dogs with more desire to work, and Rex had plenty of desire to work, so I sort of brought him in. I think to take it back to a sheep scenario, when you're breeding rams or whatever, you want to buy one a little bit uglier than you want, if you know what I mean. And I think dog size need to be probably a little bit more full on than we want. Otherwise, it sort of weakens down a bit. But just my experience.
So when you're looking to pick a pup or a going dog or something, what are you looking for in that for you to buy it?
Well, going by my track record, I just walk away and hide and leave it to Simone and the girls and everybody, because I am the worst pick of a pup you'll ever find. The 2 Australian rep dogs that I had, besides Lady, I was allocated. Out of the Baz, Lady, Mel, Glen litter, I picked a black and white dog that couldn't even get to work. Fortunately, I'd kept this other lady in reserve, and
lucky you did.
And Daniel took over. Daniel took on Bazza. He was going to train Bazza, but with football and school and that sort of thing, Bazza was sort of too good to let go to waste. So we did a bit of a deal, and then I took the 2 of them on. So
So how long have you had your own line then?
Oh, I was very fortunate that Doug Connor, to go back a step, I was very fortunate that 4 years after trialling, found myself in the Australian team with Lou Noble, Malcolm Taylor, and Doug Connor.
Oh, wow.
And I reckon, like, it was the masters and an apprentice. So, but Doug had a dog there that I just loved, which was Christie's Bowler, and another dog that was a handful, but it just had awesome work, and I loved it. And I said, well, can I have a pup? And anyway, when 6 months later, he says, I've got a pup for you. I've got a pup for you. And that was Glenview Connie. So she went on to represent 4 times.
So
Oh, wow, what an effort.
You've mentioned there a few times the Australian team and repping. For those that don't know, how many times have you repped for South Australia and then gotten through and repped for Australia? Because you'd have to be one of the higher number ones, wouldn't you?
Yeah, 13 times I've repped, and I've got through 7 times into the Australian team.
Oh, wow, what an effort.
Yeah, I did it 6 times in 12 years with the first 2 dogs. And then, when the kids were a bit little, I was a bit burnt out too. I'd been chasing Dog of the Year points, and because our state does Dog of the Year, is how we select our reps. So you do chase the Dog of the Year points all year, and then you got to go to the Supreme, and then you got to go to New Zealand. And, while I would never knock back the opportunities to do it when the kids were little, I sort of buttoned off a bit, and didn't really. I made sure and keep my breed going, and then about the time I could see they were starting to get L plates and turn 16 and wouldn't have to be driven somewhere, and I thought, geez, I might be able to get back and have a crack at this again. And that's when I contacted Mick to do the mating to snap with the Sandy and Produce Lady and Bats, and so way going again. So,
and your kids seem quite involved with the property and your dogs. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, they are. Having 2,500 acres of crop in this area is very, very. We're very pushed. We're right by the coast. We have a very small harvest window, and we have a very small spraying window. So when it's time to go, it's time to go, and I can sit on a tractor and not look at a dog for 3 weeks or something, and the kids and Simone and that, they all look after them for me, which without that I wouldn't be in the sport, because I just can't find the time to feed and run them, but they take care of that. So.
And those 3 weeks, is that a hard 3 weeks for you being away from your dogs, or, like, in the training, or do you look at it and go, it's a bit of you time, and all you have to do is like be driving straight lines and bit?
No, they'll because we're so intensive. Like, there's always mobs to shift, even seeding time. Like, you spray the paddock off, but there's this much dying grass there, so you put 500 sheep in there for 3 days, and they eat that, and then you pull in with the sprayer and the seeder, and then you got to move those sheep on, you see, so they get moved on. So you're still working your dogs quite often. It's just you just
day-to-day side of it.
Yeah, you might just grab one for 20 minutes, shift them of a sheep, put him back in the kennel, and off you go in a truck or a tractor or something. Pretty long days, like. It's not so bad now. Daniel's home from school, but I used to spray most days and seed till 12, 1, 2 o'clock at night for like months, 6 weeks.
Take it, knock it out of you.
I don't need much sleep. I'm lucky like that. So I don't know whether it's a fact or whether it's a condition of what I was doing. But anyhow, every so often you'll get a wet day or something you can't sow, so then you catch up a bit or tear off down the paddock and try and sort the sheep out. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that you like breeding your dogs. What is it about breeding that you like and enjoy?
I think it's just the challenge of it. I've got a particular type of dog in mind that I want to breed. I'm pretty fussy. A lot of dogs don't turn me on, to be honest. No offense to anyone, but like that's just I need a sort of a balls to the wall sort of dog that pushes me to the limit, because I think that's how you end up with the best dog. The dog that's pushing against you a bit is also the one that's going to push against the sheep as well. I'm a big bloke with a lot of presence too, so the soft-natured dogs don't suit me that well.
Yep.
So I like to get them and knock them into shape, if you know, like not physically, but to get them working how I want. I go to trials. I can sit in a trial and I hear people say, "Oh, that dog arcs nicely. Look at that. That dog arcs nicely." And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't want a dog to arc. I want to be able to put the arc in them. I want them to come in tight and grip their sheep.
So you're obviously taking your work dogs to trials and vice versa.
Yep.
So Lady and Baz are they go to work with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No. Just in the last little while, I've slackened off a little bit with them because the next two are coming up. I've never really had a lot of open dogs. Like one, maybe two was all I've ever had before. And, Connie did exceptionally well at what she did, but she was really my only dog. She just did everything on the farm. She had that much power and grip that you could put her on 400 sheep and she would push them anywhere you wanted. You could then put them in the yards and she would back all day for you.
Oh, wow.
And so part of the bond I had with her was that we were working all day, every day, and we just go to a trial. And after, she was a handful for a start, but after a few trials, like after a few years, it was sort of like, oh, we're in trial mode. I better be gentle, or else he'll cut crook at me.
And that, oh wow, I meant there, that was not disrespectful at all. What I meant by that was there's not many open 3-sheep trial dogs that you hear going to work and backing races or backing sheep.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I took Lady and Laura. They had a little utility type trial down at the south coast here during the year, and I thought, oh well, I might have a go at that because my dogs can do that sort of thing. And I made it sure before I went. Laura can back very well. She's quite agile, and Lady's not a backer, but a very good side worker works the side really well. And they said, no, you can work the side if you want. So they finished first and second in that. So.
Oh wow, awesome! Congratulations.
Thank you.
No, it is I love that someone that has done the most prestigious thing in a 3-sheep, then goes, oh, let's go throw them in a utility. Not a lot of people would do that.
Yeah, I expect them to do whatever I want, really. To me, working outside in the paddock and working in the yards, that's just the one job, as far as I'm concerned. Like they're the dog. I'm there to open the gates, and that's it.
Yeah. Do you think being able to take them to work makes a difference to your dogs?
There's two sides to that coin, because, as I've mentioned, like my dogs, the rare time that they'll get any specific 3-sheep training or whatever, usually we're flat out on the farm. We pack the caravan, or Simone packs the caravan, and we hook on. Sometimes we hook on at like 8 o'clock at night or something like that to drive to a trial. And as I'm driving out the front paddock, there's 3 sheep there for an obstacle, and I might spend half an hour put them around and give them like 2 or 3 minutes on 3 sheep to tidy them up, and away we go.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
that's cool.
it's you've got to work your farm with 3 sheep trialing in mind, though. So if you cast onto a mob of sheep, you make sure they stop at the point of balance, and you make sure they lift, even though it's 400 sheep. You make sure they stop, and you make sure they lift. Like it's still training for trials, but it's not in the little paddock. So while I'm busy, they get a lot of general work, and things happen on the farm that you can't make up when you're trying to train a dog. Like one sheep will get its head caught in cyclone and get left behind from the other mob or something, and you put your dog around and try and push it out or go. One takes off in the scrub or whatever. You can't plan for that. You can't train that when you got your little mob next to your house. But on the other side, those with the little mob near their house, and I have got some, and a bridge near my house, but those with plenty of time and the training obsession, I tend to call it, that like they got all that time to do and go over so much stuff, but then those strange things don't crop up.
Yeah.
And they're great learning experiences for dogs, because they learn to trust you.
Problem solving.
Yeah, and problems, sometimes it's them problem solving and you just got to lead them to it. And sometimes you've got to say, no, go on, get back in that scrub. There's a sheep back in there, And when they find the sheep, then they go, oh, this guy does know what he's on about. So, yeah.
So when you're looking, when you've got a nice bitch and you're looking for an outside sire, and you like a dog with a bit of a sire that's a little over the top, are you and someone being extremely busy, are you relying on somebody's word and their version of that dog is like that, or do you try and make the time to go and see that dog yourself with your own eyes?
Generally, yeah, I get to see a lot of dogs I've been going to the Supreme nearly every year, so in every state, and I'm just as keen to watch the novice as I am the open in that sort of scenario. In the last few years, I've sort of thought, I need to, because of how I am, I need to keep clear of the lines of people that are training all the time, because then the natural's gone out of it. I said to someone on our New Zealand trip, I forget who it was, I think they thought I was being rude, but Greg Prince was a great trainer, and his schools everywhere developed and helped a lot. But I think by teaching us how to fix faults, I think we went on and bred from those faults, if you know what I mean. If a dog's not balancing properly, and put the rake out, get him around the balance, do that 200 times. Next thing he's going to balance, right? He's a good dog. He scored 95 at the open trial. We better breed from him. So, and nothing against Greg, but the more we develop our training, the less natural is left in the dogs. So
Yeah, we're training those faults out.
Yeah, but then we're breeding them.
They're genetically.
Right?
Yeah. So you've got to fix one dog, but the next generation you might have to fix 15 dogs.
Yeah.
So are you finding then you're using more work dogs that are also you're trying to find that happy medium between the two?
Yeah, that was part of the interest in going to get Laura from basically farm stock. I went down and saw Morris, and yeah, I'd been line breeding back to Connie's line because I loved it so much, and he'd been out crossing all the time. And I come home and I said, I reckon he's got more the type of dog that I've been looking for than been trying to breed than I have, and that's just how it worked. So, and then what was it? 6 months ago, he took a pup back. So he took a pup from Laura by Baz back to his place. So there's sort of a bit of swapping going on.
Yeah.
And are you breeding that type of pup you want now more consistently?
Yeah. I think they are coming out more and more. That is by Bellevue Rex out of Sandy, and we mated her to Pip Hudson's dog Rocky Sky, and Pip loves his, and I got two here going pretty well, and I think one's up in Queensland with Jacko.
Yeah.
But they sort of, I think they're turning out more because I've sort of more hard nosed on what I want. Essentially, I suppose I want a trans Tasman dog more than I want a trial dog, and they're two very different. I believe they're two very different dogs. I've had a lot of trans Tasman success, but I was a nobody when I got in the Australian team. I hadn't won an open trial. I made placings. I came to Vanilla. I'd been trialling 4 years since I started, but only seriously a couple of years. Just a stockman and come in, finish top of the Ted Gaby in the Australian team. Jim O'Connell did something similar, and just recently Tom Joyce has done something similar. So it's not necessarily, the Trans Tasman is not necessarily just a path for a grade 3 sheep trialer, because there's different aspects and a different type of dogs needed, I believe. So,
what is those differences in your opinion?
Well, they've still got a head very well. They've still got to be, but they need a bit more strength and power. I think they also, like in the the normal 3 sheep trials, I call them the top and tail dogs. They start at the tail, and the sheep break and they run out and around and they stop in front of the head, and they can run clean of their sheep. They go from the tail to the head, whereas the Trans Tasman dogs that I've had, they impart pressure on the sheep like all circles. So they are running on that spot, and they've got a grip of their sheep, and so that's how they can drive so well, because they're not like they're putting weight on their sheep, whether it's on the run or the ribs or the shoulder or the head. Whereas as I see it, the other type of dog is he's pushing at the tail until they gallop, and then he's run around and blocking at the head.
He's alleviating pressure.
Not steering. And then you got to add throw in the factor of the man as well, and the man's got to match the dog, I believe. I select stronger dogs because I'm a big bloke, and I need a strong dog to push up against me. If I'm at the Maltese Cross or whatever, I want to stand right next to it. I don't want to leave a gap, and so I need a dog that's going to shove sheep right up to my toes.
Yeah.
If you step back, you leave a gap, and the sheep can break past you. So, yeah.
And liking those dogs with that bit more strength, and you said you'd rather put the bend in dog rather than have a dog that's nice and archy. How do you go about putting the bend in those straighter dogs?
Starts for a young pup, I probably wouldn't try and push them out till they're at least 2 years old and going pretty well. You sort of just go with them for a lot of time and just be happy they're working, and then I sort of do a little bit of rope work, a little bit of dry training, just push them back, push them out, use whatever's available. We have a lot of limestone rocks that you don't hit the dog with them. I'm not hitting the dog, but you throw between the dog and the...
Yeah, claim that space a bit, yep.
And we have a lot of clay, little clay balls, I suppose, are like the ground. Pick up a little clod, that's what it's called, a clod. And you throw that at the dog and it hits the ground and sprays dirt in its face and whatever, and you just keep pushing it off. Give it a command. Try and put an arc in it like that, and that. But yeah, you've got to keep them keen for a start, and once they are sold on the idea, you got to admit that for the first up till probably 4 years old, you might have a good run. They might get up the sheep and have a bit of a rough one. So. But it's all about the long journey for me. Like you want to win the novice when the dog's 2 years old, or do you want to win the open from the ages 4 till 10?
Yeah. So for you then, what boxes do they need to be ticking for you to keep them until they're 2 to then start with that sort of further training?
Well, they got to be going to the head and not stopping shorts. Number one, you first get them on there. Do a little bit of fence work. If they want to, they just want to power through between the sheep and the fence. I'm happy with that. They want to avoid the issue, pull back, whatever. I've culled every dog that's turned-tailed for 20 years. I can't stand it. That's just a big indicator to me that the dog's not either right in the head or right. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, you can train them out of it" and that sort of thing, but that gets back to the breeding issue. I don't want to train them out of it because I might decide they're a good dog and then I might breed from them.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then you're going to see that thin nerve come through again.
Yeah, it all comes again. You see, so I just think. One of the things I thought of the other day that every state in Australia, their judges point turntailing, and yet it's the only dog fault that some states do. Some states say, "Oh, we don't penalise the dogs. We won't penalise the dogs. We don't judge the dogs. We only judge the result." And yet, turntailing is just a dog thing, and everyone pings a turntail. Those old fellas 100 years ago started pinging turntails because it was an indicator. To me, it's more than just being not able to stand up. It's more an indicator of the brain. I had a dog that I could not pull off balance no matter how I tried, and I worked and worked and worked. And I was at a trial, and I finally got it to take 2 steps off balance. And I thought, you beauty, and the sheep bolted and that dog turntailed all the way down the ground. And I went home and it was on the market the next day. If someone wants a dog that turntails and can get them out of it, good luck to them, but I'm not interested.
Yeah. You're always going to see it pop up again.
Yeah, and good on you sticking to your own beliefs as well. That's good.
Something with the sheep, like growing fine wool sheep, you get a fault, you can see it coming through. I wish now, like I'm 53, but I wish now when I was 25, I wish I culled harder on my sheep. I wish I culled everything harder when I was younger. Like I still see faults coming through of things. We carry taggers when we lamb. We have to pull a lamb, we tag them. If we do pull a lamb, we put them in a ring of mesh. The dogs catch them. Baz and Lady are pretty good at that. But we put them in a ring of mesh for a day so that they can mother up, because merino mums are terrible. And I've had a couple that you go back a day later and you lift the mesh up and they just stick their head up and run away from this lamb. And I just put the dogs on them again and put a tag in them and they go.
Yeah.
You just got to cull hard. The more you cull, the better off you are, I think.
Oh, I actually never heard of that method.
No, either. Yeah.
So you're literally just putting I'm just imagining like a ring of mesh around. So you give them like what, a meter or two, a couple of, just so they can't get away from the lamb, right?
That's right. Yeah. Merino. As soon as you interfere with a merino, ewe at lambing time, she'll take off, you see,
Yeah.
and just never come back for the lamb. That's the end of it. So sort of, we gave a little buggy, I call it, a side-by-side, and I'll go around the ewes and lambs with 2 dogs, Baz and Lady, or one of the others, and you just sort of, there's one with having trouble, cut it out a bit with the buggy. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
They're hanging on the side. You just give them the command and round they go. And they just block. They don't drag them to the ground or anything like that. They just, with strength, they just hold them and block them. And then you just walk up behind and grab the ewe. And sometimes I've got to tie its feet or whatever and go across the paddock and get a ring of mesh. We have 1 or 2 in the paddock sitting there.
Yeah.
It's about, it'll be 2 metres in diameter.
Yeah.
And then make sure that's over top before she gets up after you've pulled the lamb. But yeah, if I've got to help, well, I'll give them one help, especially a maiden ewe, but I always tag them to make sure. But yeah, if it happens again, look out.
Yeah, that's actually, I've never ever come across that. I thought that's actually a really good idea, and I 100% understand why they become a cull as well, right? You can't just keep that up; it's just inefficient.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So we're probably marking 125, 130% of lambs out of 19 micron fine wool ewes. Mm-hmm. So the ewes are quite good bit of South Australian blood in them. So they're not like, they'll be about 80 kilos.
Yeah. Yeah. So for someone that probably doesn't fully understand why you're culling them, is that because 9 times out of 10 their progeny will have the same issue, lambing and stuff?
Yeah, well, it carries through that. Yeah. It carries through. I'm sure of that. So, you know, we've even got to the point now. We've in the last 10 years, since there's been Donny sheep around and all these other breeds, I think a few might have found their way through into the stud rams. I'm not sure, but there's a temperament in the sheep, in merinos, I'm saying, that, you know, like you might get 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 300, but this ewe will see you come in the gate at lambing time, she'll stick her head in the air and she'll run full tilt the other direction. And, of course, merino sheep being merino sheep, all the other ewes take off after her, and then all of a sudden you got all this mismothering and everything, and we're even catching those ones with the dogs and getting rid of them as well, because like one lamb out of a ewe like that compared to the damage of mismothering is, you just don't want it. You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're all products of our DNA and our genetics, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then, like you said, then you relate that back to your dogs. Those dogs that are tail turning, well, then you train it out, beautiful. But then the progeny, well, you're gonna have to deal with the same issue again and start keep training. Well, you got the potential of that happening.
That's right, and I've seen a lot in the breeding. I don't mind looking at pedigrees and dogs, and of course, but I've seen a lot where it's a bit of a trap that my dog won the national and your dog won the supreme. Next time they come in season, we'll mate them. You know what I mean? Like you got to really look at the type and try and work out what's going to suit your dog. You know, like or probably a bit the Baz and Ladies litter. Going to Wandara Snap I needed an outcross. I thought I was too tied up and I needed an outcross. Mick had done pretty well with him. I saw him work down at Tasmania. He blocked the sheep 7 times from coming out of the bridge, which impressed me pretty well. He was probably a little bit better feeling dog than what I had. So I just, I thought, well, that was a bit of an improvement, put a bit of feel into what I had and still had strength or good blocking strength. And, so that's what I did. It seemed to work.
As like you mentioned, like some like really like knowledgeable names earlier, or throughout our chat. Has there been a dog that you've seen around the traps in your time and gone, geez, I'd love to own that dog?
Alive now or?
Oh, whenever.
Both.
Oh, I would have loved to have Christie's Polar that Doug Connor had. That was Connie's father. Like he was an awesome dog. Doug and Ivan Solomon stopped into Karoonda. Like Karoonda's a very hot place in the Mallee. It was about 40 degrees. We were having a trial. It was on sand. The dogs could hardly stand on the hot sand. Nobody could get. South Australia's got pretty narrow obstacles, and these Mallee sheep were just mad. And nobody could get to obstacles or hold them on the ground. And Polar came out, and Doug roared and carried on as he always did. And Polar ignored him half the time, and he just gripped these sheep so tight. And he put them in the pen twice. Nobody could get anywhere near him on these mad sheep. He was just, I thought he was an awesome dog, and that's why I wanted a dog by him. So, yeah, I think that dog was probably one that I'd definitely line up for.
And you mentioned before, like live or dead. Like, is there one around now that you're like, oh, I'd love to have that in my paddock? You can say your own.
No, I haven't seen anything of late just yet, but I keep looking. There'll be something will pop up. The pedigrees are so deep, like something comes up from 5 generations ago, and you go, oh, look at that. That's awesome, isn't it? Like, so it's just a matter of keep looking, I think. It's a never-ending search, and once you get a good one, you're forever looking for one the same, if not better. So.
Yeah.
You made a comment a bit earlier how you love watching the novice as much as you do the open, and I'm very similar like that. And for people out there that might not understand that comment, I'm expecting that you're relating to because they're less touched.
Yeah,
you see more of that dog.
You see the natural dog. You see the natural dog there. If you see a dog that's been polished, like some people might have, their lifestyle might mean that they can work their dog every day or 3 times a week or whatever. But like that, the more that's interfered, the more you've got to question. Now, is that the dog or is that the bloke? What the bloke did? Because there's some great trainers out there and there's some great dogs, and but is the great trainer making the dog look great, or is the trainer interfering or making a good dog look worse as well? You can have that happen too. So.
Yeah. What is it about 3 sheep trialing that's kept you in the sport for so long? Especially as a young fella, like you don't see too many young people out having a go of it, especially with the time off and everything. What is it that's kept you around then?
Just sheer luck, I think. How long? I'm not the passionate trialer that it would appear. Like I didn't ever set out to be a sheepdog trialer. Like I got a dog bred by Gavin and Joe Flavel, and as a farm dog, as a replacement to my first dog, because Milton, my brother, had been in trialling 10 years before. And he said, oh, this litter's coming up. That'll be a good one for you. And I said, does it back? Yes. Yeah, the mother backs. The mother was bred by Tony McCallum. Tony McCallum, is it? Anyway, fellow up in Queensland now. But an alibi dog it was. Alibi Meg was the mother. And I said, does it back? Yes. I said, what awful colour is it? No, you can have a black and white one. I said, well, I want a well-marked bitch or whatever. And that was my things, and that was Amadeus Pell, who represented Australia twice. So, but I just, they were having a dog day. They said, bring that dog along. Gavin wants to see whether it's any good or not. And he came up to me and said, if you don't try and trial that dog, it's a waste. So I had to go up the Pascoeville Farmers trial and won the novice, second in the open, and didn't do much for another 6 or 8 months. Then had another go at another trial and sort of did all right at the novice. Crooned a sheep fair. I went along on a 45-degree day and won 3 sheep and yard novice with her. And went to the trained like crazy after shearing every night, the most I've ever trained a dog, because I'd landed in this thing called the Ted Gaby Challenge and I didn't want to embarrass myself. So
how many years ago was that, Steph, when you started?
Started in 95. 99 at Benalla was when I got into the Australian team. We represented it in 2000. Yeah. 2000, 2001 with Pearl, and then Connie again in 07, 08, and 11 and 12, I think.
So not far off 30 years now.
Yeah, 27 years.
Yeah, that's a long time to be dedicated to a sport. Like, well, a hobby as well, right? Like, that's fantastic. And especially like you mentioned, like you got around to nearly every Supreme that you, since you've been trying. Like,
well, the credit of that goes to Ben Dinning at the first Supreme I was at. He said, and Simone and I we were married. We were 30 years married yesterday.
Congratulations, mate.
We were married. We were 23 and 20, so we were married young, but we didn't have kids. Didn't think we could afford kids until we were about 30. But Ben actually come up and said, if I was you, I would go and buy a caravan and make the Supreme your annual holiday off your farm, away from the farm. And I think we've only missed 3 Supremes since. So the kids are growing up travelling, like Melanie made the comment the other day. She went somewhere with some mates and they went 3 or 4 hours drive, and she said, Dad, I couldn't cope. I said, why is that? She said, they've never been travelling with you. we filled up with fuel. We drove for about an hour. Then they had to stop for a pee. Then we drove another hour. And yeah, apparently that's well known in the family that when you stop for petrol, you stop to pee and you get as much food as you can.
That's right.
Dad's not going to stop until the petrol finishes.
But what is it that keeps you trialing, mate, after so long? What keeps the fire going?
It's definitely, it's not the trophies, it's not the money, because there's not much in it, yeah. Especially in South Australia. The best way I ever heard it put for me was a cricket analogy from Matthew Hayden. He was asked what it was like to be up the other end when Adam Gilchrist was in full flight, and he said he had the best seat in the house. Yeah. And I think for me that's what puts chills up my spine, is that sometimes you're out there watching your dogs work, especially when you're bred, and you sort of stop working and go, wow, how awesome was that to see what that dog did, like it's the bit that's what really gets me going, I think.
And just off that there, like, Haydos could hit a ball, right? So it's pretty humble for a bloke of that caliber to sit back and say that for Gilly. Yeah. And then, he could hit a ball. He was an absolute cracking opening batsman. But then for you to sit back of someone that has so much experience and still sit back and watch that dog and do that's pretty humble of yourself as well. Like, that's pretty cool.
Oh, well, yeah, I think that's what sets me alight. I mean, I go and I like to win. I like to represent Australia. I like the Trans-Tasman. a course made for me, sort of, if you know what I mean. Like I've always felt more comfortable on that course than an actual 3 sheep trial course.
So, and for people that don't know the difference, what are the differences besides that? Like you've mentioned the cross drive.
Yeah, so you once you leave the gap, like it's based on a traditional course, but once, like with a gap, a normal course has a gap race bridge pen over in South Australia, different variations, Queensland, New South Wales, but they've all got, Western Australia, they've all got similar sort of obstacles and a corridor that you walk your sheep or you pull your sheep along, basically, so they come on inside that corridor. And the Trans-Tasman have replaced the middle 2 sections with 2 New Zealand sections, so that once you leave the gap, you must walk through it and then drive your sheep to the Maltese and negotiate a Maltese cross. So that's like a big plus sign. So they've got to go in one way and then around and out and through the other way. Then you drive up to the bridge as well. And when you've got the drives are the challenging part for some people, because you've not only got to work your dog, you've got to work yourself at the same time. So you've got to, while your dog's putting pressure on the sheep, you've got to be putting pressure on as well. So and that comes back to blokes standing in stockyards or whatever. You like no one in a hurry in the shearing shed stands in a tyre holding the gate saying, "Come on, dog, hurry up." You know, like you get in and help your dog, and your dog appreciates being helped. And for my dogs, every time they start doing a few Trans-Tasmans, they almost grow an extra leg. They can it puts an extra 20% onto them for normal trialing. So it's just like it's the being able to drive and force and work off balance and put that pressure, that sideways pressure on sheep, helps you obstacle and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, beautiful. How you mentioned like representing Australia a stack of times now. Last year you actually captained Australia. Was that your first time captaining or
second time? Yeah.
And was it any different the second time than it was the first?
Yeah, the second time, like this last time, was I won't say easier or better or anything like that, but the 3 other members that went to New Zealand had never been in the Australian team before, so they were all new. So they were all keen to listen and learn and asking questions and all that sort of thing. So I think we did pretty well considering. Would have liked to have won, but that's pretty hard in New Zealand. But yeah, no, like everyone was trying their best and they were trying to learn and do as well as they could. And I think as a side issue to that, I think there's got to be more education on Trans-Tasman courses so that there's more people know how to do it. We started in South Australia about 5 or 6 years ago, running 1, maybe 2 a year, which is we only have like 9 or 10 trials a year, 8 or 10. So we're running 2 Trans-Tasmans. I think the results have shown in the last 4 or 5 years that we've had 5 Australian rep guys picked in the Australian team, 5 out of a possible 6 in the last 3 runoffs. So it just means that because at a local trial, you go out onto the Trans-Tasman course, you run every dog you own, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, whether it's novice or whatever, and that's when you learn how to do it, where to stand, what to be, and I just think New Zealand now they are running quite a few Trans-Tasman courses as well, trying to build their knowledge. And I think there was a few reluctant in South Australia when it first started, didn't want to do a Trans-Tasman, don't care, didn't want to learn about it, but pretty much throw a blanket over everybody. If they got a dog good enough and they got in the Ted Gaby Challenge, they'd be a threat, because the course is not unnatural to them anymore. They're not going, oh, what's this Maltese cross thing? How do we drive? You know, what do we do there? Because they've all done it. They've all had multiple runs on it. So, yeah, I think that's one thing that we could look at.
I was actually going to ask, like, if you could change one thing about trialing, or three-sheet trial, what would it be? But rather than change something, you'd actually recommend maybe running more Trans-Tasmans.
Well, I think if we're serious about beating New Zealand, they've got the wood on us at the moment. We were, but it's happened before. When I first started, I'm pretty sure New Zealand were 6 or 7 wins ahead of us, and then we had a bit of a purple patch, and you know, Malcolm Taylor had 2 or 3 good dogs there for a bit, and Ivan Solomon had Jewel, and Jim O'Connell had Lefty, and Paul O'Kane had Yvonne Goolagong. Like, there were some pretty handy dogs that come through in that period, and we sort of caught up with them again. And yeah, now we've been beaten quite a few times. So
it's funny how sports works against New Zealand, right? Like, you mentioned that, but then you look at like rugby league, for example, where like we used to smash them, and then they come through for a few years, and we couldn't beat them, and then now, like, you just changed. Like, between Australia and New Zealand, there's just this competitive edge, and it doesn't matter what sport it is.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows a bit, you know, like, and that, you know, it can just come down to not a fluke, but just what dogs are around at the time, or just what handlers are around at the time, you know. Like, Malcolm was a great mate of mine, and a great competitor, and we used to push each other a bit. But in that Trans-Tasman stuff, like, he proved that he knew that better than anybody, and like, for him to be running those successive dogs through, that was a great thing for the Australian team. And then you just throw in a Greg Prince, or you know, like Ivan Solomon with Jill, or Paul O'Kane with Goolagong, or Jim with Lefty, and you know, like, you just built a team around it, and then someone new would come in, and you are sort of only blooding one new one every so often, but there's so much knowledge that you can learn. Like, it's a bit like my first time, the Masters and Apprentice. You could just the way those blokes went about it, and they never sat you down and said, you should do this, or you need to do that, or you need to do that, or ordered you about, or whatever. But it was just being amongst the company of them to see how they operate is where you picked up so much, I think.
No, absolutely. Paul O'Kane's good at dishing out a few names to his dogs, isn't he?
Yeah. No, he always makes it interesting. Paul does, but
yeah.
No, she was a very good dog, Yvonne Goolagong. I've seen her do some magnificent work. They're all tennis players or whatever. They got 3 names, haven't they?
All sports people.
Yeah.
All someone famous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mate, someone that's come up, like, had a family farm for so long, still relies heavily on their farm, and on the family, to manage the farm. And we all know, like, we're in a labour shortage. Mate, what advice would you give to someone out there that wanted to crack or a start in the agricultural sector?
Just have a go. I think that's about, like, it wasn't easy. There was plenty of people who told me that I should stay at school, and it really grates me, but they would say you were too smart to be a farmer. You should go and do this, or you should do that. I can remember when I started year 1, I had it already worked out how long I had to endure school until I could come back home on the farm. So, you know, like, it's been my passion. If you really want to have a go, I know it seems tough. It seems nearly out of reach, but it always did seem nearly out of reach. And, you know, like, if someone someone gives you a little bit of a hand or whatever into something, there will be opportunities come, and just if the door's open, just a crack, stick your foot in it and push in and have a go. Like you have a go at anything, because you're dead a long time. That's what I think. Like if there's an opportunity, just have a go. What the worst case scenario is, it doesn't work out. The worst thing, worse than that, I would think, would be to say, gee, I wish I did such and such, or gee, I should have took that on. I mean, just have a go, I think.
And on from that, is there anyone you'd like to see us sit down and have a chat with on Dog Talk?
Well, I wouldn't mind seeing Grant Cook from Western Australia have a chat. He's what would you say? Grant can be a little bit aloof, and he'll ring me up and abuse me now for saying this. He likes to be a bit like that, but him and his brother, they run a big family farm over there, and up until the debacle of Western Australia's sheep, I think they were up to about 5,000 sheep, and he runs all his trial dogs on his farm as well. So, there's a few of us around silly enough to think that we can do both. The West Australian dogs I have a lot of time for, because they run a yard and utility section in amongst their trialling, so their dogs are quite versatile.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say and seeing videos of Grant's dogs myself, they have to align with like your morals as well, and like what you like.
Yeah. He's a bit the same. He thinks a dog should work on the farm and go to trials. So we're either both mad or we're onto something.
Seems to be working for both of you. So,
and I don't mean to be rude, but I hope he does ring you and give you a mouthful. That way you can convince him to get on and have a yarn with us.
Yeah. I'll go have a yarn with him. Yeah. I'll probably get a text in a minute, actually.
Beautiful. Get into it, mate. Send him our way.
One last question, as always. Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks, and why?
No, I'm pretty slow. I can't run very fast, so I'll just take the one duck the size of a horse.
No, that's all
right.
I'll be a pretty big one.
Yeah, I was going to say, your height would come in handy there.
Yeah, I'd nearly match him, I reckon.
Mate, thank you very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. Also, I would love to really thank Enduro, Hindgy Food for working dogs with Real Kangaroo Meat, for jumping on board for their third consecutive year of supporting Dog Talk. That's a great effort from Paul and his team. So thank you very much. Stefan, thank you very much for your time. To everyone else that listened tonight or is listening back, thank you very much for listening. And please remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning for each other will be a sad one.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, mate.
See ya.